Hi, I'm Michael Lumpkin, Director of AFI Festivals. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this special tribute to Mira Nair at AFI Fest presented by Audi. Beginning her film career as an actor, Mira quickly moved behind the camera to direct several documentary films. But in a few years, she shifted again to direct her first fiction feature, SALAAM BOMBAY, a film recognized with the Cannes Film Festival's Camera d'Or Prize and an Oscar nomination. Since then, she has directed over a dozen films that have secured her place as a master film director: Mississippi Masala, Monsoon Wedding, Vanity Fair, The Namesake. And as a longtime activist, Mira has shared more than just her films with the world. Using the profits from SALAAM Bombay, she created the Salaam Balak Trust, which works with street children in India. And in 2005, she established the Maisha Film Lab in Kampala, Uganda, a nonprofit training initiative for emerging East African filmmakers. It's an honor to have Mira Nair with us and to present the US premiere of her latest work, A Suitable Boy. Please welcome to AFI Fest, Mira Nair, and joining Mira, Indiewire Editor-at-Large Anne Thompson.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. I love The Namesake, and I love Irfan Khan, and he's a very special actor who we lost far too soon. And you gave him, honestly, one of the best performances he gave you. Talk a little bit. I mean, I was going to come back to this later, but tell us now. I mean, tell us how that movie. You turned down Harry Potter, right, to do this, and you were so compelled to make this film, and you wanted him, and you wanted to put all these different cultures together, partly because of your own background and how it spoke to you. Explain that.
No, it's always because of my own background or foreground or present ground, it's always that for me. And The Namesake is an extraordinary moment in life for me because it was inspired and kind of propelled into being by grief, really by grief, by losing my own parent, my mother-in-law, who was not supposed to leave us. It was kind of malpractice, we thought, in a New York hospital, and in 2003, and we were not I was not prepared for the finality of loss, and burying her in a freak snowstorm in New Jersey. A wonderful woman who had really made her home was East Africa, and the idea and the pain and the loss of burying a parent in a country that is not their home was what propelled The Namesake. And Jhumpa Lahiri, the extraordinary author, and now such a part of my soul, really like a sister, understood that. And I happened to read the novel just a month after, or less than a month after, burying my own mother-in-law. And it just, I felt the solace of understanding in her story, of understanding that pain. And that was one part. And the other part was that Irfan and I go back a very long way. When he was 18 years old, I literally found him in the basement of the National School of Drama in Delhi. When I was looking for people to work with me on SALAAM Bombay, my first feature film in 1986, that was and I was immediately riveted by this hooded-eyed praying mantis kind of guy. He was this gangling, wonderful, he listened extraordinarily, and he was just different from everyone else because he had such seriousness about him. But then as I got to know him, such comedy as well in him, great sense of humor. Anyway, I asked him to come and leave the great Institute of Drama, which is our best institute for actors in India, and work with me for months with real street children to create this new kind of thing I was doing called SALAAM Bombay. And anyway, long story short, he was at the end of several months of living together in an empty flat and many children, he just was 6 feet I think 2 inches tall, and he was just double the height of the real malnourished children who were to become the stars of Salaam Bombay. And I just couldn't fit him in just because of his gait, literally ridiculously as that is. And the only scene, which is his debut in cinema with this great actor, was the letter in which he plays the scribe writing a letter and pocketing the money of the street child. Anyway, I told him at that point, Irfan, that I will never forget and I will find you again. And that was what was Ashok Ganguly in The Namesake, I think close to 15 years later. But we remained friends even before the 15 years. But I looked for a role for him. And that was the role. And he, my gosh, he played it to excellence. He'd never left India until The Namesake, And that too was a big part of how he played Ashok Ganguly, because he played it with the eyes of an outsider as well as an insider, and the heart of an insider.
I read a story that you abandoned him and left him on his own in New York City to sort of figure out how to sort of navigate, just to put him through the experience.
I basically put him with the Bengali caterer of our unit, because I wanted him. He's not Bengali. You see, in India, we come from several communities, and we all have our accents, and we all have our way of speaking. And Irfan is an amazing actor who happens to look Bengali, but is not. But his wife is. So that was very good. And we modeled his accent and his way of speech on really Jhumpa Lahiri's father, and also the caterer. And so I sent him off with the caterer. But he was, my heart fills when I see this, because we've lost him. And it was just much too soon. I mean, this never, and it's never a good time. And it just happened recently. And it's a very big thing to know he is no more. I just can't bear it, actually.
No, I loved him too. And just from, as a cinephile, just from watching all his performances. So this particular scene though, you had him do something very specific to get what you needed in that. He delivered it, and then what happened?
Moved on. Well, in this scene, he knows me too well, because we grew up together in a sense, and he said, "You want something more?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And I said, but I don't want that, that Rona Dhona thing, which is an Indian expression that, that sentimental, mawkish, you cry and weep and wail, thing. But I'd want to feel that the tears will fall, but they do not fall.
And he gave it to you.
I was so shameless, and I told him, and he said, not no worries in a flamboyant way, but he just nodded, and that's what he did, what you've just seen. And it was only that one take, Anne, and it was never again. I mean, we didn't have to do it again, and but that was him. And because we had a sort of comic, beautiful shared comedy, actually. And he knew everything. He knew how to seduce, and he knew how to charm. But he also had the greatest soul, because it was all about how he observed that life, and that's what he essentially factored into his art. Yeah.
So one of the things that I think you bring to the movies that you make over all this time is that you straddle all these different cultures, from India to your adopted home in Kampala, Uganda, and New York City, where you've been teaching at Columbia. And you make shorts, and you do political things, and you do talks, and you do TV films, and you do series. So you're just mixing it up all the time, and it all seems to enrich in this very, very beautiful way all the different things that you do. So I wanted you to sort of talk a little bit about how you think your remarkable. You're like a sponge, sort of absorbing all of these different things, all the languages you speak, all the different ways that you can communicate and understand different cultures, from Queen of Katwe to Mississippi Masala. How can you straddle all of those worlds so easily?
Well, I think I don't know, but we are also raised in India, even though I was raised in a very small town in Orissa, East Coast, very remote and so on. But what we come from in our culture is a deeply syncretic culture that is based on an enormous layers of plurality. So you meet any average Indian, they will speak 4 languages. I mean, there's almost no question about it, because that's how we are raised, and it's not about education, it's just about how to live in our world, because people come from elsewhere, and language, cuisine, clothing, accent, everything means something, and it's all related into this deeply syncretic way, which actually in my newest film, A Suitable Boy, is the heart of it, is the heart of that syncretic meeting of Hindu-Muslim cultures and others, but Hindu-Muslim cultures that create who we are, and that is so deeply threatened in the world today. So I think maybe because of that, and also because of the fact that we were like growing up in Orissa, there was not much. There was not an airport. There was not a cinema till I was 10 or so on. But there were Russian literature that was sold for 10 cents a book, because India had a deal with Russia. So the deal was that, we would literally buy for 2 rupees, War and Peace. 2 rupees means not even 2 or 3 cents, And so we were raised on Russian literature on the one hand, Sanskrit on the other, the Beatles lyrics backwards, those of us who loved and could own a gramophone. Really, I mean, and I remember protesting even the Vietnam War when I must have been about 16 years old in Calcutta, for instance. So the world view was much larger than the village or the town that we lived in, honestly.
So you'd fallen in love with literature and you ditched the idea of going to Cambridge for Harvard. Why
That's
Harvard?
True. Well, I didn't ditch Cambridge for Harvard. Harvard was not in sight at the time. Cambridge University, England, conducted our senior Cambridge school leaving exams, which were called the ISC, which kind of determined, it was told, our whole future, how we did in those bloody exams. So those exams, I kind of I really aced them. And I was given a scholarship because I was, I topped them, or I was number 3 in India or something, and to go to Cambridge. And I did not want to go to Cambridge at all, because I did not want to go to England. For me, the Raj and the English colonial occupation of our country was, I told my mother, if had I been born 15 years before I would have been an anarchist, and I would have done something really dangerous and probably been in prison, if not anything else. And she was just, shut up, please don't go further. But anyway, so that was why Cambridge was not even an option for me. So I went back to Delhi University in Miranda House, a wonderful progressive female college, essentially. But there I became an actor, and then for a year and a half, but I was still plagued by the fact that I may be somebody who needed to cross the oceans and maybe I was an academic, I don't know. I was good at exams, but I didn't respect that about myself, but that was true. Anyway, but unknown to my whole family, I applied to the top dog in American universities that seemed to me could afford to give me all the money. Like I didn't have money. My father was a civil servant, and there was no question of that. So as luck would have it, Harvard gave me the fat envelope, and gave me a full scholarship. And I left my country really for the first time when I was 18 and a half in 1976. And my real day job at that time was a repertory actor. I used to work in a wonderful theater company in Delhi called Theater Action Group. And that's where I started really my love of actors and my love of the performance, but not wanting it entirely, because I really did want to see if what I would do could change the world or to impact the world in the way that I saw the inequity of the world around me. Because in India, it's impossible to shut a blind eye to the inequities and to the strange cheek by jowl existence we have, which is one of vibrancy and injustice at the same time, of those who have everything and those who have nothing. And that was, I think, if there's any fire that I have in me, it is that propelled me to try and do something. What it was, I did not know. That led me to come to Cambridge, Mass. Yeah.
So that is a through line through all your work, and you took the documentary work that you did and you fed it into SALAAM BOMBAY, a very fierce and unusual hybrid movie. We see these hybrid movies now all the time, but when you did it, it was not a normal thing to do. How did you come to realize that would work?
I have to tell you that when you use the word normal, I mean, it's almost...
It's not a word you use, yeah.
Who's normal? What's normal?
Yeah.
But yeah, actually my nickname, growing up, and it's still stuck, is Pugly, which means mad girl, crazy girl. So there's nothing normal about me. But SALAAM BOMBAY came out of... I worked for 7 years in like very pure cinema verite documentary form. My teacher was Ricky Leacock, the great Ricky Leacock at MIT, and then my teacher was D.A. Pennebaker, who was my great friend and mentor until he passed, and he's like I used to call him, and he kind of liked it, so I will say it. My bullshit barometer, was a Pennebaker. And these guys, anyway, so they taught me this cinema of engagement, of not really of manipulation, but how to hopefully capture the unpredictability or the absolute inexplicable extraordinariness of real life, but not life that you would actually tamper with or interfere with your camera. You would witness rather than change. Anyway, I made about 7 years of such films. They all were in India. India Cabaret, on strippers in a nightclub. Street kids would come in the morning to their homes, wake them up with hot tea and dance for them. I mean, it was a fantastic role reversal, which was one of the first inspirations of SALAAM BOMBAY. And then I would live with them, because the way to work in that cinema verite way was to be one of the people, And so anyway, that gave me the inspiration of SALAAM BOMBAY, of the children and their vitality and their extraordinary insistence on living a life and a childhood despite having nothing, leaving their families across India, coming to Bombay, which was the Hollywood of India, because they saw the streets in the stories that they saw on screen. They saw the streets paved with gold and flowers, but life was different that way, So that was what led me into SALAAM BOMBAY, but I did not want to make it in a hit and run fashion, like the way I had to make my documentaries. In documentary, you don't know what's going to happen next. So I didn't want to do that with the street kids. And that led me to ask my dearest friend from Harvard, who is still my dearest friend, Suni Tarapurwala, a fellow graduate screenwriter. She had never written anything but short stories before that. But we started like living for 4 months with a street gang, and then made up our own story based on their stories and our stories of SALAAM BOMBAY. And it was also an amalgam of my work in the theater, because I wanted to work with real children, with not actors playing them, and mix them up with real actors. But so I actually invited the Barry John, wonderful theater director in Delhi, the theater director of my company at that time, the company I worked with, to come and work with us in a basement in Bombay. We gathered 29 children from the streets. We paid them a little bit more than they would make as rag pickers. And we, for 6 weeks, brought, Suni's screenplay into the game and basically invented the film with them. And Irfan was completely a part of it from the Yeah, from the word go, we have Suni. Suni is also a photographer and has great images of Irfan, and playing with the children, and I mean working with the kids. Anyway, so that's how Salaam Bombay was born. But it was born, yeah.
So, so how did, so then you were launched and you won the prizes at Cannes, and you went on to do Mississippi Masala with. Talk about how challenging it was. You had an idea for this extraordinary romance with and you wanted Denzel Washington and Sadir Choudhury. I'm terrible. Yeah. But were you able to just sort of say, yes, this is what I'm doing, or was it a little more challenging?
You know, Anne, it's never like that. I'm still not saying this is what I'm doing. I'm saying it, but I'm like, you know, the reality only my wonderful agent and right hand knows. But well, with Salaam Bombay was a phenomenon in its way. It was the first Indian film that got out into the world after Satyajit Ray's films had been seen, but you know, and then the agents came and the Hollywood came, and Harvard, the little word of the H word somehow struck them as, okay, then she's one of us, you know, she'll understand our Hollywood insanity. But instead, I just jokingly, you know, I think one of those Paul Mazursky films that showed Sam Cohen at his best. What was that film? I'm suddenly blanking. Anyway, I just joked with one of these agents who was crowding me, and I said, well, get me a lunch with Sam Cohen in the Russian tea room. And then we talk. And next thing I knew, that was what I was doing. And I loved Sam. He was one of my great...
He was great. He was cool.
Greatest person. And so he signed me up just to get rid of the others, really. And anyway, then I started to make Mississippi Masala, but it was not easy at all, despite the success of Salaam Bombay, because there was, to be sorry to say this, but there was not a single white person in it. And the studios at the time, you know, did not trust that at all. And one person, the head of Orion, I remember at the time, said to me very bluntly and charmingly, he said, Mira, you have to make room for a white protagonist. And I just looked at him and I said, thank you so much, you know, and all the waiters in the film will be white, I promise you, my dear, and all of this. We laughed and we clinked our paper cups and I left, you know, and that really was how it was, despite Denzel having won his Oscar for Glory, and you know, he was a contender, even though it was probably his second or third film. But in any case, we found a way to make it, and now I must tell you that we are re-releasing it after 30 years this year.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Fantastic. It's one of my favorite movies, and it's also, by the way, for all of you who might want to check it out, one of the sexiest movies I've ever seen. And it's Denzel at his peak of alluringness, if you like.
I know. It's really true, and I think, you know, it's Kamala Harris is sort of the anthem of what was Mississippi Masala. I mean, you know, it's an interracial. It's exactly her antecedents, and exactly now that we can celebrate them. But at that time, in 1991, when it came out, it was really radical, but spoke to a lot of people who had felt that they had never been seeing themselves on screen before.
So do you have a sense over the years of showing your movies and traveling with them around the world of who your audience is? You must have some group of people that you think you're reaching. I'm just curious about that, because people talk to you, they tell you what they love and what they respond to. It's women, it's smart people, it's people of many different cultures. What do you think? You know,
in the beginning of Salaam Bombay time, I used to share an editing room with Spike, who's an old friend. And we used to share an editing room because we had to pay for 24 hours, and he would work 12 hours and I would work the other 12, and we would get it for, you know, the price of one. And he was making She's Gotta Have It at the time. And I think I was making India Cabaret at the time, one of my documentaries. And I saw how wonderful it was with what happened with She's Gotta Have It, which was radical. And it was the first time, you know, an African-American filmmaker got to make a film in that way. And I loved the success, but I thought I could never have that in this country, because with Salaam Bombay, I was making a film about our street children in patois, in a kind of Hindi mishmash language. But I was making it really with the audience of street children in my mind. Like, I wanted to make it for the cinemas that they go to see, films in Bombay. And I really wanted that. I didn't want some highfalutin nonsense that would only be in film festivals and would not speak to my own people, and that was my goal. But I never expected, and I hoped, but I never thought there was no model for it to be opening here in Lincoln Plaza, in Alice Tully Hall, so Oscars and all, forget about it. That's the beauty of starting things for the first time. It's like what the Bhagavad Gita says, you beware the fruits of action. You don't even know the fruits of action. Now we are all spoiled. We've had this or that success. So you think, oh, maybe, but it's not like that in the beginning at all, So, but Salaam Bombay did that in an amazing way across the whole world. It was released, and it still continues to speak to people. But with the Mississippi Masala, I also did not know whether I had an audience, but it was a real revelation. And when I went to open the film in England in 1991 or two, and I was standing in front of Curzon Cinema and to wait to do the introduction and the Q&A. And I saw this line around the block, and I followed the line actually. And I saw that it was just like interracial couples, hybrid, supreme happening right there. The best fashion I ever saw in England. It was all there. And they were all waiting to see themselves on screen, truly. And I thought, well, maybe now I am beginning to have an audience. Because, I am somebody whose roots are pretty strong in India, but I have flown in several directions in different continents,
Indeed.
And so at that time, but now the world is thankfully both beyond its borders, but also bloody hell emphasizing its borders much too much. But in beyond its borders, there are so many people now who live between worlds, like I have now lived for 30, 40 years. So I guess if you have to ask me who is my audience, it is those people, which now at least have become bigger. But I always, when I make a film, I always make it so that the people of the film will want to see this film. So Queen of Katwe does not work for me if it doesn't work in Katwe, actually, if you ask me. Because
I think that makes sense. I again, that's one of my favorites of yours. It's extraordinary, and you made it at a studio. You made it at Disney of all places, which is still a shock to me. I know, but what I'm curious about is that you've been able to do indie. You've been able to work with the studios. You've managed to go back and forth. The Fox Searchlights of the world with, and you've made Vanity Fair. You made Amelia. You made. But Monsoon Wedding is the one that comes to mind as the personal movie that you made, the movie that sort of put you on the map as an auteur, if you like. And I really, it has to do with having a writer that you can collaborate with, right? And in order to have a little bit of control over you sometimes you have control and sometimes you don't.
Well, I have to say just one thing about that. Definitely, I'm so beholden and attached to writers and my writers, which initially and still Suni Tarapurwala to begin with the Monsoon, with the Salaam Bombay, and then Mississippi Masala, and then with Sabrina Dhawan on Monsoon Wedding, but. It's so I actually regard Salaam actually as the film where there was no one there to tell me what else to do, like no one interfering with my mess, in a way. And after, so Salaam Bombay was actually the first, if you could say, auteur, in the sense that no one messed with me because there was no money to be messed with at that time.
No stakes.
Yeah, no stakes at all. But Monsoon Wedding was wonderful because I raised $1 million without a script being written, just on the idea that I'm going to make a crazy film about a riotous Punjabi family like my own, and in a wedding, because at a wedding secrets emerge, darkness emerge, but what we as Punjabis, as the North Indian party animals of India, have a way of prevailing. you know we just have this largesse of spirit that can take care of a lot, but maybe not this secret that will emerge in Monsoon Wedding, which was the secret, yeah, of
I want
yeah.
to ask you one thing about how you make this. This links up to Suitable Boy as well. That you have the ability to take these enormous numbers of people in these very riotous, chaotic, and very detailed and very specific and beautifully set dressed, and the costumes and everything that you've got going, and you're just seamlessly moving everyone around, and they're getting the reaction shots. You know exactly what's going on. It's all about people reacting to each other. How do you pull that off? What is your way of doing that?
Actually, it reminds me of the only letter I received from Mike Nichols, the great, wonderful Mike Nichols. I did not know him, but he saw Monsoon Wedding, and he wrote me a letter that said, you make the best party scenes.
It's true.
In cinema,
True.
Well, my husband will tell you that I am a party animal, number one. Like, I really that's what I love. I love a circus, like layered good time. But I'm also somebody who has never had enough money to make anything I want. So when I'm setting out to do a party situation, it's very specific and very prescribed. I don't have hours. I have very limited ways to make the masti. We call it masti in our language. In Urdu and Hindi, masti means an intoxication with life, an intoxication. You're like almost high. You are high on life, not on drugs, but on life. And that kind of, how do you invent masti in the most economic way possible? Well, a large part is the casting. A large part is that I cast newcomers and legends and great actors and people who've never faced the camera before, and create a sense of safety and abandon and fun, F-U-N. So that, but fun goes very hand in hand with rigor. So we prepare to make the fun on screen, because when we are finally doing it, in Monsoon Wedding, we only had money to buy one scene of rain machines, which is the end scene, the finale of the actual wedding. Before that, we did not have the money for the rain. Because we we had an insurance claim, we lost some negative X-ray damage. The insurance company had to pay. And when the insurance company had to pay, I asked them for rain machines for 15 miles, for each scene. So we got some more rain in Monsoon Wedding. But otherwise, it was on one scene for rain. And that was the scene. And also, I do cast, really the cast. It's the cast. It's the creation of a sense of really a family. And in the Suitable Boy, it's 4 families, and they're not cast overnight, as you all know. They are cast, over weeks and months, and we prepare and we create a sense of this familial interaction, which I, thankfully, in my life, my family is my bounty, and I know how to achieve that and how to create that, perhaps. But really, we work very economically and very quickly to achieve what we do. So
you do rehearse, and you do use roving cameras, handheld cameras.
We do rehearse, and we use never more than 2 cameras ever. In Monsoon Wedding, it was a handheld camera and Declan Quinn's beautiful camera. But we do rehearse. But by the time we do these kind of climactic scenes, like the end of Monsoon Wedding, we are all so used to each other. And I'm also a documentarian, so I'm literally behind Declan as he's shooting and talking to the actors, move this way, let me go that way. Because we don't really have steady cams at that time. We didn't have fancy equipment. We did a little more of in that Suitable Boy. But in Monsoon Wedding, I was like right in the melee. I mean, sometimes firstly, half the actors were in my clothes, And so if I was seen and the camera, it's no problem. It's like my wardrobe. So it doesn't matter. But
So I can tell that you and I could go on like this for a really long time, but I want to get to Suitable Boy. So is this true? It's BBC's first period drama with an all South Asian cast. You have a memorable quote. You say it, "The crown made brown." Is that your quote?
Well, no. The crown made brown, in a crown in brown is what I was trying to raise money in the beginning. That's how I said it, because it's true. It had the sweep and the magnificence and the layers of what the crown was. But I'm very pragmatic, Anne, as you know. I am not somebody who I don't expect that the budgets will be, it's the brown discount budget, So
Yeah.
But my thing is, and our thing is, as a subcontinent, I mean, is never to show the struggle, is to excel at it, and not to let us be seen in any way that is less than anything else, because the refinement we come from, the traditions we come from, in every way, from music to clothing to just the way we look and all kinds of things, it needs to be seen. And Vikram Seth did, he's written the most extraordinarily deep, human, funny novel of who we really are and were at the moment of freedom from the British, that I just wanted to do deep justice to that.
You go all in with the 50s, I've got to say. It's just stunning. And it looks like it might be the biggest budget you've ever worked with. Is that your sense?
Not really.
6 episodes. Is it 5? You directed
6 hours.
6 hours.
Well, I worked with my co-director in some moments of the whole thing. Is Shimit Amin, a wonderful director in India and here, and he did a couple of locations across the whole 6 hours, and it was a way to honor his work, which was so meaningful to me, by giving him the credit of one episode. But we worked across all episodes. Yeah,
gotcha.
And but yes,
what took so long for this to get made? I mean, it's such a huge book, obviously, literally. That must be part of the answer.
Well, I can't answer that, but it's never been easy to get our movies made on an international platform that feature just us as the subcontinent versus let me say, somebody from the outside coming and saving us. You know what I mean?
Yep.
This is an entirely subcontinental novel, and I loved it since the day it was written in 1993. But and I know that this has been like the third attempt by the British television in some way to have it be made. And the first 2 I was not a part of, really. But it's been a long time that it should have been done. And even now it was made with. I was so happy, and I was I mean, I didn't have to insist on being the director, because they were so grateful, really, and happy to have me. But I was going to make it no matter what, however stringent the budgets would be, because I believed in it, and I didn't want it to be ruined by someone who would not know what it was like.
The critics are all saying, I sampled a bunch of the reviews. I was just looking around, and they were all saying that they all wished that it had been longer. I mean, this is not normal.
Less is more is always good. I mean, I could think that it could be longer, but it was not to be. But what the 6 hours is to be was, for me, the jewel, and it had to be whatever the best it could be, in the pickled variety. But it's very funny, because in India we are used to, really long stories, and I have people congratulating me for the abridged version.
Well, I look forward to seeing the rest of it. I got a sample of it. So what? Forgive me for this. I cannot help myself. Shantaram. What the hell?
Why are you
asking?
What
the hell?
What the hell? Yeah, that took the 50th year of my life fully, Shantaram, and we were so ready to go, but it was the year of the Hollywood writers' strike. And literally 2 weeks before we started shooting, it was declared, the strike. And the slogan at the time was "All pencils down." And you know, and everyone knows how much writing is done when you're really shooting sometimes. Anyway, it was the strike went on to beyond 100 days, and then darling Johnny Depp went off to who was our star and our producer.
Yep.
Went off to make Pirates 6 or whatever, and the thing basically fell apart. And
so are you actually doing the Jungle Prince of Delhi? Is that
very
happening?
much
Yeah.
steeped in it, very much. We are just about beginning to conceive of it, and it'll be about a year of writing before we go back in and shoot, in I think it would be end of next year. And then I've been doing for 10 years, believe it or not, a big stage, Broadway bound sort of stage musical of Monsoon Wedding. And that's really now ready. And now COVID, we were opening in London July this year, 2020, but then had to shut down like everyone else. And now we are opening next year, at the end of next year, in the subcontinent, and then coming back to London in 2022. So that's a big thing that I've been developing for a long time, and it's like going back to my theater roots, but with a wonderful story of Monsoon that everyone in the world knows, and yet is still so timely and deep and enormous fun, and with a really extraordinary creative team. And so those are the two things on my anvil besides a feature film that I will hope to make.
So what is your best advice for those of us who are experiencing extreme anxiety and stress and sleeplessness during COVID? You have such joy, you have such calm. What is your recipe for survival?
Oh my God. My recipe for survival is, nature. I am so desperately needing. I don't have my garden. My garden is in Kampala, but my garden is outside, also in Riverside Park in England, in New York. But my recipe is nature and family and yoga and intoxicants and.
Sounds like mine. I'm
and
with
you. And great art, really. That's my, yesterday was my birthday, or 2 days ago, and I hadn't left my home. I'm really in lockdown life in New York City. And for my birthday, I just wanted to go to the roof of the Metropolitan Museum and look at the art and look at the world in a greater horizon, than what I have, but with my friends and with my family, because really without the glue of love, everything is meaningless. So it's a combination, Anne, and it's very threatened these days with this endless lockdown. But I'm grateful for the path I am on, because the art of those before me keep me going.
Thank you so much. This was really fun for me, and I hope it was for everyone else.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Anne. So lovely to see you.
Be well.
Thank you, the American Film Institute, for this lovely honor. Thank you so much.